Hello, good morning. Is this on? Does this need a little red light on, or is that okay? So everyone over there can hear me as well, so that's great. Hello, everyone over there. Yeah. I got nothing there. Excellent. So what I'm going to do is try and warm you up a little bit this morning and try and keep you interested. I'm not going to use any slides. So that's it as far as visuals go. It's great, isn't it? I don't know if you've ever seen that before. Well done. Probably advanced through your course. You managed to switch it on. Excellent. And then hopefully do something else with it a bit later on down the line. Okay, we'll try. It's a tough crowd. How are you doing over there? Okay, let's see. Here we go. I'm going to talk to you about a few things that are happening out in industry. Because when you finish here, you've got to go and get a job, and you've got to do something really impactful in that job to change the world and make yourself a multi-billionaire, and then retire early before my age, and live the rest of your life in prosperity and wealth. So good luck with that, and I'm going to help you a little bit about how that might happen and what that might mean in the future. It's quite good, it's quite exciting actually, because the world of IT is fundamentally changed. If you wanted to get ahead because you're scared witless about people and hope to have a career hiding behind a machine for the rest of your life, you're in trouble. You've actually picked the wrong course. This is about people. It's people first and technology second. But don't worry, there's a real sweet spot out there in the moment in industry. People are looking for talent, especially digital talent, to come in and revolutionise their organisations and make them fit for purpose for the next few years. This is incredibly important. So my name is Thilthorpe. I'm a director at the BCS, the British Computer Society. I've only got 3 problems with that name. The British bit, the computer bit, and the society bit. Apart from that, I'm completely satisfied with what we call ourselves. So we're also known as the Chartered Institute for IT. Okay? We have 70,000 individual members worldwide. We also have 22,500, careful now, we have 22,500 primary school and secondary school educators across the UK as well, all part of our organisation. How we recognise communities is how we build membership. But we are not a membership club for the sake of members. We are here, our purpose is to make IT good for society. And that sounds rather grand, doesn't it? And the best way I can describe what that means, making IT good for society, and what we've done recently, is certainly the work we've done around the national curriculum. So we've changed the national curriculum to incorporate computer science into the curriculum, but also to help it to be used to teach in other areas and other disciplines. Computer science is incredibly important, but so is digital literacy. We believe that everyone who leaves school should be digitally literate, and that everyone should have the opportunity to study world-class computer science. And this is important, back to the reasons at the beginning. It's about health, wealth and happiness. We don't have natural resources to generate our income and to generate the economy in the UK. We have to rely on our ability to think and innovate and get through the knowledge economy. That's what we're for and that's what we're about. The Cisco CEO, you've been here more than a few days, you all heard of Cisco, right? Cisco is a rather large company, and the chief executive stood down last year and he said of the Fortune 500 companies, these are the biggest 500 companies in the United States, most of them are going to go bust in the next 3 years. And the reason is twofold. Firstly, their market's going to get disrupted, but secondly, they will try to go digital and fail. Because most organisations don't really know what they're talking about when it talks about digital. They've heard it, it sounds a bit trendy, it's got something to do with Uber, hasn't it? And what does that mean for their organisations? They're not quite sure. So what I want to do is give you a couple of examples, I think, of what digital means. And digital is actually thinking digitally rather than doing. You people are going to have to do the doing bit, but you're also going to have to take these organisations and show them what digital means. And there's many different ways that this is manifest, and it's just through your behaviours which is driving new things in industry. You probably don't know it. A few years ago, for example, we heard that television, event television, you know what I mean? I mean about Britain's Got Talent, which is a misnomer if ever I heard one, and all that kind of stuff. Those sorts of programs won't exist in the future because the internet's going to change it. And what happened, of course, was event television was actually enhanced by the internet. Because now we have multiple screens running when we're watching something on TV. It's not just you want to watch something on TV, you want to tweet about it. And just little insights like that have really changed fundamentally organisations and their approach to what it is that they do. Facebook, for example, is the world's biggest media company and doesn't generate any content whatsoever. You give it the content. Facebook's multi-billion dollar valuation is based on stuff that you give to them for free. Then they put a price tag on it and resell it back to you, or your advertising community, or the people who want to talk to you. It's a really neat trick. So a media company that doesn't produce any media. Same with Google's marketing company doesn't produce any ads. So the way that these things are changing is fundamentally difficult for people in generations my age and older who don't understand how people and how markets are going to react to changes in the industry. So how do we think differently? Well, let me give you an example. You've all heard of Avis Europe, right? The budget rent-a-car people you see in the airport. No? Yeah. I should have known that your default response to any question is, I'm sure it's much better in class. Is it? No. So, there could be something happening here. Avis Europe is a rent-a-car company. It's a small rent-a-car company. Well, it's not small actually, it's all across Europe. The clue's in the name. What Avis do is they sell people cars. But what they did really brilliantly was buy Zipcar. I'm going to ask you a question. I already know the answer. The answer to this question is, Has everyone heard of Zipcar? Yeah. Aha! Well done, that person. So, Avis bought Zipcar. Zipcar, as we know, is the technology that allows you to hire cars. They have cars all over, usually big cities. You have an app on your phone. You go and you wave the phone, there's a QR code in front of the car unlocks. You get in the car, you put in your personal keypad identification in the glove compartment, take the key out, and go and do what it is you need a car for. Now we know that cars depreciate at a hell of a rate. So if you buy a car, just by driving it away, you've lost a few £1,000, depending on how much you bought it for, and you don't use it all that often. You might do it more if you live in the countryside, but if you live in a city, having a car is actually a major problem. Because firstly, parking it is an issue. Now you can't afford to live in a house with a drive, certainly not in London, because that's a multi-million-pound house straight away. But you have to park it somewhere, so you park it on the street. And in London, it's very difficult. You used to do this. You'd use the car once a month. And say 4 weeks later, you go outside your door and you think, well, where did I park the car? It's in a street, somewhere in a 3-mile radius from where I'm currently standing, and I can't remember where it is. So this piece of metal is depreciating at a hell of a rate. And what is more, that how we derive status from stuff is changing. Actually, if you go on Instagram and go, look at my nice car, before long, someone will take the mick out of you. If you're really enslaved to BMW or whatever it happens to be, someone's going to take the mick. Because the point on Instagram isn't how you arrived somewhere, it's the experience that you had at the destination. So if you went surfing or if you saw that great game, that was the point, and that's what you want to share with people, not the means of transportation. So what Avis did, they did a bit of market research to find out what sort of technologies they should be using and how they think their market is going to change, how it's going to be disruptive. So the first thing they did is they went out to all of their customers and they said, how do you want us to communicate with you in the future? Do you want email? Do you want us to tweet you? Do you want us to send direct mail to you? And all of their customers said to them, never speak to us again. I thought, So, what did they do? Well, they really got underneath the answer of that question. They got underneath the bonnet of that to figure out what it actually meant. What it means is, when you've arrived at an airport, the last thing you want to do is queue for ages to have a really stupid conversation. Did you have a nice flight? No. Oh. Do you want to hire a car? Yes, that's why I just queued for 25 minutes at the car hire place. What they realised was what they wanted was technology. As soon as someone arrives at the airport, all they need to do is send them a text. Your car is in this bay, use the QR code to unlock it, and off you go. You don't need to queue for ages. You can just get on and do whatever it is that you need to do. So the piece of genius there, the digital thinking, was not accepting that never speak to us again was the true answer, but understand if that's the case, what sort of organisation do we need to be? We don't have to have loads and loads of staff waiting to have stupid conversations with people. Just need to be able to get in the car. We can allow technology to help us do that. So we get in the car and off they go. What they're really good at, what Avis Europe is really good at doing, is making sure that this strategy is followed in everything they do. Because the strategy isn't about whether or not they increase market share in airports, which it might, because it's a decent customer service and decent experience. This is a punt on the future of car ownership. Avis thinks that we're going to change the way that we buy and use cars. They think it's going to be a subscription-based model. And if you don't believe me, well, it's interesting to see what Apple might do. Do you know what Tesla is? You know, the Tesla manufacturer of electric cars, very big in the States. Apple might buy Tesla, because they've got so much cash, not because they're really interested in the motor industry, but because they think it'll be an interesting addition to an app they might build. And that's a very, very different way of looking at car ownership. And that's what Avis Europe is trying to do. Avis thinks it's in competition with BMW and VW, and BMW, Volkswagen, Audi, all of the rest of them, because they want you to use them as the primary source of buying a vehicle, rather than going out and purchasing one yourself. And you see that with the advertising they've done recently. Have you seen the one where the guy or whoever it is clicks on the car, and one time it's a Porsche, the next time it's a family car. Depends on what it is you want to do, okay, and what sort of thing you're trying to do. If you want to buy a Porsche, that's a huge amount of money, time and investment. For the 2 times you want to come back here with all your school friends and go, haha, look at me, I'm driving a Porsche. You only need it for 2 hours, right? To show everyone how successful you are. Then you go back and live in a tent. No one needs to know, okay? So the way that we sort of derive status is changing radically. What's interesting is how they have to keep pace with that technology. If they decided, right, we're in competition with BMW, what are they going to do next? Have you heard of summons? Yeah. Yeah? Who said yeah? Yeah, forward-thinking young man. Yeah? It doesn't matter, it was better than even if it's not true, it's a better answer. Well done, top of the class. So, summons in the States is an app that parks your car. But think how far it goes. So you arrive back in your, you arrive back home, okay, and you just hand over the car, you get out of the car, and you hand it over to Summons. Summons parks the car. If you've got a garage, it will reverse the car. I usually swear at this point, but you know, CRB checking, all that kind of stuff. So it reverses the car into your garage. It automatically, you know, it communicates with the garage door goes up, parks the car, garage door goes down, waits for you. If it's an electric car, it will also then plug itself in and recharge. Okay, that's what it's designed to do. Or if you've got a drive, it will park there. Or, if you're an idiot like me who can't afford either of those things, it will park the car in the nearest available space in the street, in proximity to where you live. And then even better, to solve the problem I talked about earlier, when I'm ready to leave in the morning, I use the app again, and it bloody turns up outside my front door ready for me to get in. Okay? And or it comes out the garage, or it unlocks itself from the robotic arm and is fully charged and ready to go. And they thought, well, Summons, this is interesting, this is Avis Europe, and companies of that ilk getting interested, thinking, well, what could you do with that? What if I stayed overnight in a town miles away, and I had too much to drink, it happens, and I want my car. So I go again on the app, and the car drives itself, takes itself out of the garage and drives itself all the way to my house. Sorry, to where I am in the city, to take me home again. Because the future is autonomous vehicles. And this is happening right now. This isn't some far-fetched thing. These are the things that you will be dealing with in your career. Not just the technology and how you get all that stuff to talk to each other, but how people might use it. That's what people will look to you for, that insight. How might these technologies change the way that we live today? So Avis Europe has to think about whether or not they buy Summons. And Summons has to think about whether or not Zipcar had the right idea by putting loads of the same vehicles all over the place, rather than having empty cars driving from where I live to where I stayed last night. You know? And if you layer on, by the way, data in there, you've got all sorts of particular conundrums. Can anyone spot yet with regards to people and where they stayed last night and where the car is going to pick them up from and what you might be able to do with that data? It'll come. You'll figure it out. So, there's an interesting conundrum. That's just to do with cars. But let's talk about cars a little bit more, because I'm warming up now. You can tell probably. You're a captive audience, and I'm going to keep going. So let's talk a little bit about cars. Let's talk about Uber. So we all know about Uber, right? You know, the taxi firm. An amazing company. In America, where everyone loves to sue you, the driver of Uber shot the paying customer with a gun, and Uber walk away scot-free. And this is a country where half of their population is obsessed with suing the other half. How can that happen? It's because Uber provides an amazing service, but everyone who you buy the service from aren't their employee. And the car that you get into isn't owned by Uber either. It's just a platform. You know, Uber is not disruptive technology, but it's very disruptive as a business idea. It wouldn't have worked 5 years ago. The only realization that Uber has been able to make is that everyone has got GPS in their pocket, Now what can we do with that? We can match up people who need a lift with people who are able to give one. And it's the same as Airbnb. People who have rooms available. So it's all this stuff about the sharing economy, which sounds woolly and fluffy, but ends up you getting shot in the back of an Uber, right? It's all about sort of how do you, these dark assets. Dark assets are just things like, empty rooms. How might you be able to monetize that? That's what these platforms allow to happen. But to me, the point isn't autonomous vehicles per se, and certainly not autonomous cars. And I know the taxi drivers are in trouble because they drive up and down the Strand areas where we have offices in London with signs in the window that says no cards, just cash. Everyone carries cards, not everyone carries as much cash as they used to. So they're not really thinking about the user need, I would argue, when it comes to building their product or service. And that's why Uber are coming, and organisations of that ilk. But that's not really the point. The point isn't Google Cars, the point is Google Logistics. Now I'm going to tell you a story about Rotterdam to prove my point. Okay? You're still awake? Time to get up. What time did you go to bed last night? Okay, let's keep going. Rotterdam. Rotterdam is going to be a peopleless port by 2018. Why do we care? Well, we care for a few reasons. This is what's going to happen. Rotterdam is an important port because all the stuff you buy, goods and services in Europe, tends to go through Rotterdam at its first point of call. It's first entry into Europe. Okay? So it's massive. It's a city of containers. And what happens is the port, by only a few years' time, ships arrive that won't be driven by people. People tend to crash stuff. Arrive next to the port. The crane, not driven by a person, will read the barcode, take the container off the ship, put it on a truck. Truck, not driven by people as well, because you can run a much more automated and integrated port if you don't have people in the way making silly decisions. And the truck drives all the way to the edge of the port where it's ready to get a driver and go all the way on. But why stop there? Why do you need to put people back in cabs? Because actually in Australia, in the outback, the massive land trains that are driving there all the time, they don't have people in them for ages. And what's happened to other road users? Well, they trust them more. They know that the driver hasn't been fiddling the tacho and has actually had a decent amount of sleep. Okay? Unlike some of you lot. They also know that they're not in a massive rage with the radio phone in about their sports team. It's Australia, it's always sports, it's never anything else. That's the only issue that they care about. Sweeping generalisation, slightly racist, it's alright. You're half asleep, didn't you know it? So these land trains are going all the way, and what happens with the other road users? Well, it doesn't really, they trust them more, so they know that the behaviour of the truck is going to be entirely predictable. Now there are some programming challenges with autonomous vehicles, I'm not suggesting that there aren't. There's a pram there, pedestrians there, and a road traffic right in front of me. What am I going to do? How am I going to program in that particular situation? What's the outcome? What's the intended outcome? But it can be done. So the challenges with regards to technology are real and true, and they are ethical and moral in their dilemma. That's certainly the case, but it can be overcome. So if you get your truck at the edge of the Rotterdam port with no human intervention, and let's say McDonald's, right, puts stuff in and brings stuff to Rotterdam, and then what happens is without any human intervention whatsoever, it gets all the way to Frankfurt where there's some guy flipping burgers on minimum wage. What you've just done is commoditise driving. And you've done it with taxis, with Uber. We've done it with me personally, because I've got Summons now, which has taken me all over the country. And HGV, heavy goods vehicle drivers, they're now redundant because the trucks are driving themselves. And all the people who were going to work in the docks aren't going to anymore. So what is the state of capability with regard to people? Where are these people going to work? What are they going to do? So either there's a bit of a roaming, someone's phoning. I don't know if anyone wants to, it says accept, you could do, or reject. Well, do not disturb. I'd go with that one. So what happens is, by the time you've got to the end of the port, and people have jumped in, you've got this interesting dilemma whereby the rest of the population who would be working there can't anymore. And they haven't got the skills to come and work in the jobs that you're going to take up, so what are they going to do? And it's a bit of the Roman conundrum. Either we're going to have a lot more time to sit around writing poetry, or there's going to be some sort of social Armageddon. And if you've ever met people, which is the more likely? So, what we have to do, this idea of making IT good for society, is people first, technology second. So what is the impact of that? What is the impact on social well-being and social welfare if these jobs are changing, and changing they are, and some of them are going to disappear. So when I was at school, Lots of my friends went on to be web developers and web designers, and that was a job that didn't exist when I was at school. And the same is going to happen here. Jobs that you will be doing in 10 or 15 years' time currently don't exist, and I don't understand what they're going to be. You really should start thinking about that. The insight that you can bring to organisations is going to change them, but you need to keep pace with that. And that's what being a professional is. So I'm really sorry if you think that once you leave this place you don't have to do any more learning. Whoops, that's not true. You've got to keep going. You have to keep your skills and capability up to date and up to speed at all time. And that'll be fine if you are the one driving the revolution. But if you're not, you're going to have to make sure that you're bringing that technology insight into organisations, be they large or small, so you can continue to be employed and drive significant change. Because in IT, we used to say we had to keep the lights on, and then we said we had to change stuff, but the responsibility of IT now is to change, save everything. You've got to save the organisation you're working for. You've got to save the society that you live in if you want to continue with your own standard of living. And it's big stuff, right? And to be a professional, that means you've got to be continually updating your skills. So the habits that you derive here are going to be really important in your career in the future. So what else happens? Well, so let's say you go and work for one of the VW, okay? So VW got a bit of a problem because IT is ubiquitous, and just because we can do things doesn't mean we always should. So the people in IT in VW, let's say, they're able to run a system, or you're able to run a system with all these sorts of car manufacturers that allows you to give you better emissions output in a test environment. And not only that, you can figure out when the test environment is being run. Just because you can do that, does that mean you should? Kodak really mucked up digital photography, right? They invented digital photography and then decided that it didn't have a future. And now they're bust. And that's kind of what I mean. But it's almost not. Because Kodak, for a fair few years, used to employ thousands of people all around the world. And when Instagram was bought for $1 billion, it employed 13 people. So we've got to think about the impact of what it is that we do and how we might derive skills in the future. If you are a doctor, Watson's supercomputer, IBM has a supercomputer called Watson. Interesting name, or not. IBM's supercomputer called Watson, it is able to predict, it is able to run diagnosis beyond any single physician or clinician. What that means is the changing nature of jobs for doctors. It doesn't mean that doctors aren't going to be there in the future, it just means the skills they need are going to be changed and different. So that IBM's Watson stands shoulder to shoulder with a clinician in hospital, especially around things like oncology and cancer treatment. Okay? The amount of data that these things provide is able you to spot and predict trends and outcomes right down to the individual or the whole population. So it's incredibly important stuff, but the nature of the role is changing. And in journalism, it's changing. The Wall Street Journal has been using computers to write some of its articles for years and no one noticed. Didn't need to notice. Some of the financial data that they deal with is so difficult to comprehend and to put into words that they have to get the machines to do it, to run the analytics and then write the articles for the humans. Okay? So there's no industry that's not going to be disrupted. Estate agents' days are numbered. Well, you don't know it yet, but they're despised anyway, so good riddance. But the reason why estate agents are going to go is because we just don't need them anymore. You know, if you're looking for a house, go on Rightmove or whatever the website is, and they've realised too late that they need to own their own website. So all of the old school estate agents like Savills and like Frank have brought out something called On the Market to try and get people to change their behaviours. But it's very difficult to move communities around the internet. Okay? So these companies are realised too late that they're really in trouble, and that's been driven by the digital revolution. But it's not all sweetness and light. So we said about personal data earlier that you are responsible for the valuation of Facebook. Where does your personal data go, and do you care? Who gets access to it, and what they do with it is fundamentally important. And it can be massive benefit to society. So we used the health example earlier. If we were able to run really good analytics around healthcare data, we can improve care for citizens. This is all very good, well and good. And lots of people say, well, it's fine, because personal data, most of it is anonymous anyway. But what if you were to take some of these anonymous data sets and mash them together? What if you're able to find out that someone who had an emergency appointment with the doctor was of a given age and lived in a given locality, and they also played truant from school. And it's a bit like the example I gave earlier when I talked about whether or not someone would go and pick you up from where it was that you stayed last night. Well, if you were to mash all these data sets together, you'd come up with some fairly startling evidence of particular activity. And you as an individual might not be too happy if that became common knowledge. There's massive responsibility with what we do. I don't know if you put two and two together as to what I'm talking about yet. We can discuss it after. You can maybe ask me a question. But these things are massively important to the whole of the population, and you have massive responsibility, therefore, as a professional. Stuff can go wrong when we forget about people and we just focus on technology. I'm going to tell you about the Wikileaks Defense. You know Wikileaks, the website? Of course you do. And there was quite a lot of CIA data went up there, which actually made everyone know about WikiLeaks. And the Wikileaks Defense was it's a very good password protocol, but actually had massive security implications. So a few years ago, there was a tent in Iraq. And on the outside of the tent, there was a keypad. And you put your digits into the keypad, and that allowed you to unlock the door and walk in. So you walked in. And on the table in the middle of this tent were 12 computers. Okay? 12 monitors. Only 2 of them had a direct uplink to Langley. Langley is where CIA HQ is, over back in the States. And they had a very, very good, those 2 monitors had a really good password security on it. The password changed every 4 hours. Okay? And if you got it wrong, even once, it would lock you out for 12. Okay? So it was very, very high security with regards to password monitoring. The trouble was, and the thing they didn't quite think through, was the shift of the soldiers who were using and operating those machines changed every 6 hours. So if you wanted to make sure that you and your colleagues weren't locked out of the machines for the rest of the working day and night, it's probably best if you simply wrote your password down on a post-it note and stuck it to the monitor. Yeah? It's fairly common behaviour, right? But if you link that with some other things as well, and this is the Wikileaks Defense, the guy stood up in a federal court in the US and said, yeah, it was my username, yeah, it was my password, but prove it was me. Because if you put the right thing in the keypad of the tent, it doesn't matter. It's still fundamentally a tent. So you just pick the flap up and walk through, and hey presto, I'm in the tent. Now if I look at the monitor, if I look at all the computers on the main table, I know 2 of them are direct uplink to Langley, and I know which 2 for 2 reasons. Firstly, every single one of the machines has got a black network cable, apart from 2 which have red. The 2 with red network cables designate direct uplink to Langley. And if you weren't sure, they're also covered with a load of post-it notes on the front that will give you everyone's password details if you could read. So yeah, it was him what done it. They got him other technicalities. But really what happened is the IT people drove a particular set of behaviours which delivered an outcome diametrically opposed to that which they were trying to achieve. And you have to understand that organisations now have to live in a security environment where it's Dido Harding as the chief executive of TalkTalk, or whoever it happens to be, whether it's Sony Pictures, the data's going to go. It's going to be out there. Anything, I would argue, that you commit digitally, you should be comfortable with everyone in the world reading it, because that's essentially what happens. We do a lot of work with GCHQ, we run the CCP, which is the CSG Certified Professional Scheme. And there are a lot of people in security, there's a real demand for security professionals at the moment, as long as you're good. There are plenty of people who work in security at the moment who just like the fact that they might be able to go and have a meeting with GCHQ because it fulfills some sort of fantasy. But you've got to be really good at security. And if you are, then you're going to be fine when it comes to future employment, because there are organisations out there right now trying to understand the world in which they live and understand as well that it's massively changed to when they started out. What the implications are, they don't really know, but they're scared. The way that we get hackers and we get different sort of talent into, I don't know, whether it's military or security, what it happens to be, has changed massively too. People aren't motivated anymore to wear uniforms, and the people who have the kind of skills that are useful to those organisations no longer get motivated with a load of gold braid hanging off their arms, you know, and lots of medals. It's a different sort of motivation. So you need to bring that skill set and bring that to life. How are you going to do that? There are lots of people coming into this profession, lots of people coming into this industry, and there's a real demand for them. But you need to understand how you're going to differentiate yourself from the next person. One of the things to do is to make sure that the particular set of behaviours and skills that you have are easily identifiable. And one of those things is professional recognition. So I would urge you to get involved in organisations like the BCS. There are others. Do something. Because most of the people in the IT profession don't take this stuff seriously enough. It's often too late before they realise that they're in a jobs market, they're in a talent war, and a talent's arms race. If you're able to demonstrate that you have the skills, you take your continuous professional development really seriously, the responsibility of being a professional really seriously, and that you bring that technology environment into companies and they're able to utilise it and change what it is they're trying to achieve, you will be fine, but you need to be able to demonstrate that. You need to show people that you're serious about your profession and your career and how far you want to take it. So I'd urge you to join BCS. We've got plenty of literature and all that kind of stuff around here to give you access to a network, especially when you're looking for a job, wider than just simply in this room. So that you can meet and engage with and talk to people who are looking for new talent and diversification to come into their organisation. And a quick example. I was talking to someone in our offices in Covent Garden. It's a member drop-in centre in London. And we were stood at the coffee machine. Free tea and coffee. Hey, right, it's brilliant, right? Best toilets in the West End of London. Strange advert, but anyway, it's true. So they were members and I stood there and he said, why is it, who am I going to meet when I come and see you in this office? And I said, well, the guy behind you is in charge of graduate recruitment for Capgemini. I went, oh. And he turned around, introduced himself to John Gillard, and now he works for Capgemini. I think he's at they have their own technology university in Versailles, which is just outside of Paris. He's been there for a year, doing his continued professional development. He got his degree, he went on and did his master's down in the outskirts of Paris, and then he's going to be deployed somewhere around the world by Capgemini working on one of their massive programs. So it's those sorts of introductions that are really going to change and motivate and drive your career. And I would urge you to take as much opportunity and advantage of those sorts of opportunities as you possibly can. Because that's what's going to make the difference between really getting out there and enjoying a really diverse and dynamic career in IT or not. What else could I tell you? The way these organisations are working now is really about small teams. So we used to have companies that just wanted massive offices as sort of cathedrals to wealth. And even IBM is saying, when I looked around one of their offices near Heathrow, and they said, well, do you want to buy it? Of course, I don't have that kind of money. But all of their teams are out there working client side. And we work with them a lot. But the real sweet spot for people like you is organisations who used to think they did groceries like Marks and Spencer's and have suddenly realised they're in the technology business. Every enterprise, I think, is in the technology game. They just haven't realised it, or they have, and they're panicking about talent. And that's where I advise you to go. I can think of a few. Visa and MasterCard used to spend a huge amount of marketing money just trying to move their market share a tiny place. And then PayPal happened. And now PayPal is being disrupted. That's the sort of place you need to go and find your opportunity. Marks and Spencer's suddenly realising, the chief executive suddenly looking at his own balance sheet and realising they're doing over £1 billion for e-commerce. And what is the security risk and implication for using Amazon Web Services? Why aren't they using Chef and Ansible? How is it that Facebook can run a virtualized server suite just off Chef, which is a company in San Francisco, 250 employees, that can scale organizations and businesses? It's always about the next thing. So best practice that you're learning is vitally important because you can do today's stuff well. What your challenge is the next practice. Do tomorrow's stuff first. Right. We've made it through. A few ers and one yes. I consider that a success. Does anyone have any questions or challenges about anything I might have said?
What do you consider a failure if you consider that a success?
Pardon?
If you consider that a success, what do you consider a failure?
A failure?
Yeah.
With regard to career or company?
Like as an audience in general.
So I try and keep everyone interested because one of the challenges is to come and say, right, we're going to do a presentation on IT. And worse than that, someone from the British Computer Society is going to do it. And even worse than that, it's the Director of Professionalism, which is actually my title, which is a title designed to mock me at every opportunity. Now I use that as that often works to my favour because people are expecting a certain type of person to sit up here and say, remember to do your ITIL. And whilst that's true, the stuff I see, I'm lucky enough to go out and talk to organisations and ask them questions like, what's successful and what's a failure? And what I try and do is try and spread those stories, because a lot of people, so Cisco CEO said that, those 500 companies, the biggest companies, they're going to fail. Really great minds are thinking, what does digital actually mean? And if we can talk about some of those things, because I think you will probably have a better impression of that than the CEO of General Electric. Now, unfortunately for you, the CEO of General Electric has already earned his millions and has defined himself as successful or herself as successful, and you're at the end of the, you're just starting out. But the opportunity you have, or what I try and excite people around, is that the opportunities you have an insight because you've grown up with this stuff. The generations that are running companies now haven't, and it's really, really difficult. Okay? They really struggle with it, and you can help them, and you can change those organisations and often save them. So success for me, it depends where I am. At Google Campus, when you're talking to all the entrepreneurs, if you don't get at least offered a beer and lots of, it's very American. I've even seen, this is outrageous, I've even seen people throw a high five. I mean, that's reckless, okay? I don't condone that sort of behaviour. But often I can see in people's eyes that people get it and those that don't. And those that get it, I think, will be fine. And those that don't, I think you need to wake up. Might be literally here. I speak to students quite a lot, though. It's fine. Anyone else got any questions? Thank you. No.
Do you think the infrastructure is currently up to date to support the future in IT?
That is a brilliant observation. No. So 4G is coming, and then 5G has already been talked about. But I can't hold a phone conversation on my mobile between London and Swindon on the train. Okay? So I find it a little bit of a challenge that we don't have. We're actually held back by our infrastructure. And if you look at M-Pesa and some of the stuff that's growing in Africa, where rather than taking all the time and effort of putting in massive physical infrastructure, they just went straight to mobile. So M-Pesa and some of these amazing banks, Vodafone might be the biggest bank in Africa. It's not what it's set out to achieve, but it's what it might become. It wasn't like the thing, we're going to be a mobile phone company and suddenly we're a bank, The way that these things happen just out there in the market, and the way that actually people trade in lots of these countries that have brilliant internet 4G signals, but don't have the infrastructure. The infrastructure actually holds them back. In the UK, I think we're being held back by our infrastructure. And we need to do something about that. It's always, and you can get into very difficult conversations about the last mile. It's always about the last mile. We have very good infrastructure apart from the last mile. Because the big debate is who pays from the last mile between really good exchange and your house. But I've seen houses and estates being built now where one of the things on the details and the particulars for the houses is talking about how fast the internet connection is. And it's the same reason why you go to some of these hubs and some of these entrepreneurs go around in cluster around certain areas, and it's often to do with infrastructure. Two things: infrastructure and people who are like-minded who want to talk about the same stuff. So infrastructure is a massive challenge to us, and we need people to sort that out. It's often to do with policy rather than technology. It's always about people rather than the tech itself. Two good questions. Any more questions? Right, between you and your lunch, most probably. In which case, I'd like to thank you very much for your attention. I hope I haven't been too boring, and I hope that a few of you have thought of spark an interest as to what it might mean to work in some of these organisations in the future. I would urge you to get involved with BCS, where you continue to get this sort of insight, and you'll find those connections. Those people are going to give you a leg up right now when you need it, and get you into those first roles and take you into those first challenges. Because you do have the talent to make a real difference, but you've got to meet the right people to help you realise those ambitions. Thank you very much for your time and attention.
Could I ask you one question? You stick up your hand if you've ever heard of the BCS before today. That's not too bad. I've been talking. I mean, I'm on the local branch of the BCS, I've been in computing for 52 years now. I wrote my first program in 1964. It was written for a very large machine, which is like this, about the length of, if you take that yellow line across there, the machine was there, and you walked up the center of it. And the exciting thing for me, and who were the really good people at that time, because the computer had 364 words of memory, not megabytes, not kilobytes, 364 words of memory. And those 364 words were contained in 12 YouTubes of mercury, and you put the signal in the top of the tube.
Not that YouTube, different one.
Exactly. Put the signal in the top of the tube of mercury, and it took 32 microseconds to come out the far side, and you had 32 of your instructions there. And one of the exciting things was how long it actually took your instruction to actually get up the top. All I'm saying is that if I look back 52 years, you guys have at least 52 years ahead of you, because the lifespan is expanding. I'm 77 now, so you're going to live to 100 at least. And the change that you're going to see over a period of time is absolutely phenomenal. I mean, from what I was doing, and at that stage in the game, they were using this computer system to send rockets up from Woomera, but they still succeeded. No one can look 4, even 5 years ahead in this industry. And as Adam says, what your challenge is to have your thinking process in such a way that you can keep up with that. Every month I get a couple of magazines in computing, and every month for the past 52 years I open this magazine and I say, wow, yeah, is that what they can do now? And you're going to be faced to do exactly that. I've been talking to Sinead, and what we are going to do is to ensure that there is a better link between the BCS and students, particularly those who are west of the Ban. Everything in Northern Ireland on BCS is centralised in Belfast, and it's our intention that we actually get that out a little bit further. So hopefully with Sinead we will be able to help in some fashion. Thank you.